fielding a issue here. Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Dawn Marie Johnson. I am the Director of Leadership and Culture for the South Dakota After School Network. Alongside me, we have our other team members, Lisa, who's our Marketing Manager, Jeff, who is our STEM Director, and Billy, who is our Executive Director. He's off camera right now. But I wanted to give a brief background of what the Fireside Chat has been and its inception. Originally, it spawned from the pandemic, and we connected as a network just to stay in touch with each other and tap into what has been going on during that crazy time. Since then, it's evolved into providing resources, giving insights to different project management, grant opportunities, just different things that after school providers were asking for. And this season, I guess the start of the school year, we're excited to start off with this particular topic because it's one that has been reoccurring within our scope of after school professionals, knowing that a lot of us stayed open during the pandemic and we're still having those residual impacts on our mental health, not only for our kids that we serve, our families that we serve, but us as providers. It's a topic that we can't speak enough on, and how we modify and grow and learn together. I'm excited to have somebody here with us today who I see as an expert in the field on this specific topic. He's one that I've been able to work with in programming through leadership. Lisa and I were able to take his leadership programs, and then from there stemmed an opportunity for myself to collaborate with him to start an opportunity within the school systems here in Sioux Falls to provide leadership training to young people in our school setting. So Tamien is with us today, and what I would love for him to do is give a brief overview of who he is, what he does, before we dive into our subject of protecting mental health and making those changes at the start of the year. So thank you, Tamien, for joining us. Give us a little overview of who you are.
Thank you so much, Dawn Marie. So Tamien Dysart, I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Think 3D. We founded back in 2016. Primarily, we work with businesses and organizations to help them build intentional culture. And with that, we all heard culture has been this buzzword for the last decade plus, but we know it goes well beyond, craft beer Fridays and slides and sleep pods and those like aesthetic things. And it's really about how do you cause this change. And what caused us really to launch the business, I spent about 16 plus years kind of in corporate environments, seeing the good and the bad ills of a culture, whether it's cared for or not, which led really to our core saying at Think 3D is a culture will emerge whether intended or not. But if it's not one that you invest in, it will certainly be one that you pay for. And why this is an important topic are just really a subject for all of us to give care and consideration for, especially around culture. When you think about the average working professional, most people don't really get the totality of the impact of work. But the average working professional spends somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 75% of their waking hours at work, going to work, thinking about work, decompressing from work, all those type of things. And with that major bucket of time, we beg the question, can you say, I don't like my job and I love my life? And those are two big extremes. But in that space, especially folks, in some of the tougher jobs where, we're dealing with kids, or you're dealing with like just tough circumstances, that's just a natural part of the things that we do. These are industries that require an extra amount of attention, care, consideration, all those type of things. Am I keep going? So I'll keep talking. Am I good to just keep rolling?
You can keep rolling, yeah.
Because I'll get off on the thing. But in that, we actually, one of our first major clients was actually the school district in Rapid City. And so we had worked with primarily their nutrition system. So we've been working with various organizations in this space for quite some time, almost the entirety of the work that we do. And so we're very familiar with, again, the extra things that happen when you're dealing with some of these adverse circumstances, individuals in these spaces. And so as we talk about this, really we challenge there's four pillars that we believe is essential to have very clear and intentional consideration, especially into the 21st century, if you truly want to have a successful organization and or culture. The first one is the very thing of culture, right? And so asking ourselves, what are we doing to intentionally invest into the culture, right? Going back to the idea of if most of our lives is impacted positively, negatively based off of how good or bad the culture is, what are those intentional investments as an organization? And then individually, what investments are we making? For those who have never been a part of a Think 3D session, our first session we always do with any client is called the power of culture, where we bring to the forefront some of these things I'm talking about now. But we do this exercise where we have everyone in the room say, what are the characteristic traits of a healthy culture and what are the characteristic traits of a toxic culture? And so people list out these things. And there's a lot of reasons why this is important. But one of those is the skill of articulation, because if you don't know what you want and what you don't want, it's easy to kind of come in and just gravitate towards what is. And in this, we talk about this idea of personal responsibility. And in a society where most of the time when people talk about personal responsibility, they're talking about somebody else. Well, the reality of a culture is it's an aggregate of all the people that actually make it up. So think about your organization, whatever organization you work for. If you have 25, 30% turnover in a year, those 25 to 30% new personalities, experiences, mindsets, attitudes, good or bad, is going to alter the culture a little bit. And so it really goes back to that question of like, how are we building the intentional culture on purpose with design? One of our other core sayings at Think 3D is nothing of significance happens without intention. So why that first pillar about culture, building it with purpose and intention is so important, and really then inviting everybody in to participate in that, because we always say, again, in this world of trying to win the war of workforce by way of pay, how much would somebody have to pay you to be more miserable? And so money matters to a degree, but it's only every couple of weeks that financial deposit is actually put into your bank account. Every single day you take home more than a paycheck. And so that goes back to the culture. What do we invest in the culture? The second pillar, which I want to spend most of the time and just having some conversation about today, and that obviously the topic of protecting mental health, making changes to start the year, is the personal dimension. Next to never, when you think about the construction of organizations, has the person, the people inside the organization been given top consideration amongst how we do these things? It was an afterthought, right? Because we got to get the thing done, all those type of things. We can look at this pandemic, mental pandemic, if you would, that we're seeing with mental health. And I was having a conversation with Don Marie the other day. It kind of hit me like one of the major reasons that we're dealing with mental health at an accelerated pace on this side of COVID is when COVID in the world generally shut down to a degree, people had to spend more time with themselves. And you go back to, if we aren't comfortable with who we are, don't know who we are, don't have tools and things to become better for ourselves, a better you is better for everyone is one of our mantras. If we don't do that well, how do you find a pathway forward? And especially in an environment, in a world where you don't see a lot of people really thriving or doing it well. And so it's easy to fall underneath this true heaviness, right, of what happens in the world. And I'll bring back again, especially the type of work that you guys do, dealing with, kids and those type of things, where it can be tough when you see these emotionally draining circumstances, and your heart goes out to these kids, and the weight of that, you take it home and you come back with that weight. Where do you escape from that? Well, one of the cores is that, how are you investing in you? Now, we challenge organizations in this idea of, in that space as an organization, is it your responsibility to make the human being, the person, better? No, it's not your responsibility. But is it to your benefit? Absolutely, right? And the problem with personal development, as we've looked at it, most organizations will still, it's personal responsibility. It's your job to develop yourself. It's your job to read the books or invest in yourself or those type of things. Okay, well, left to our own devices, literally, the average person is spending about 3.5 hours on these devices in some way, shape, or form. And data shows globally, escapism is like a $4 trillion with a T, $4 trillion a year industry. which means people are escaping from reality, which is work in their home lives and themselves. And so if you don't ever go into that space of intentionally engaging in making yourself better, you're leaving a lot to chance. Thus, you see that the issue with mental health, and thus that the year after year cycle is about the same as it was the year before, because we're not making those first pillar investments of culture and the person. I'll skip past the next two. Is just really the effective communication or the skills that you develop to get good at those things. And then last is accountability, right? So I'll pause there. I don't know if you have a question you want to toss my way, or I can keep talking. Should I keep rolling?
Yeah, you absolutely can. If anybody wants to pop messages or questions into the chat as well, we can keep an eye on those and insert those as well, but you can absolutely keep rolling, I think.
Okay. Well, I know we have a short time together. So yeah, feel free to pop a question in the chat, but I want to give you some real value, right? One of our mission statement at Think 3D is 5 simple words. We exist to add value. So I want to make sure in this next 15 minutes that I want to give you guys some value, a couple of tools that you can absolutely take going into your year to make it really, and I challenge you, the best year ever, right? Because I always ask that question, again, what does that best year ever look like, which we'll circle back to in a second. But I want to start with success. Now, what's interesting, we have one of our training sessions called Success Mindset, and I have the word mindset differently, not as one thing, because mindset is one thing, like what's your mindset on a Monday, what's your mindset on a Friday. Your mindset just any time and place is a thing. But to set your mind, I have the word set intentionally separated, because to set something is a verb, it's an action. So asking yourself, like, what are you doing to set your mind on purpose with intention for success? Well, let's back this back. I asked a question. I don't care what room I'm in. I could be in a room full of CEOs, doctors, manufacturers, car salesmen. No matter what room I'm in, I ask people this very question, and I would challenge you to think about this as well. How many of you have a personal or custom definition of what success means to you? Personal or custom definition of what success is to you. When I ask that question, over 95% of people don't have their own personal or custom definition of what success is to them. So by way of that, if you don't have your own personal or custom definition of what success is to you, will you ever be successful? And the answer is, of course not. You can't hit a destination that's not defined. So starting point one, I would really challenge all of you, like, take some time. It's going to take you some time. What does success really, truly mean to you? The best definition of success that I've ever heard is a worthy ideal pursued persistently with courage. Worthy ideal pursued persistently with courage. The best part about that is, who gets to define what that worthy ideal is? You do, right? And when you take the time and say, this is my worthy ideal, when it's truly, whether it's your kids, it's a mission, it's impacting lives, whatever that is, if it's truly a worthy ideal, you will say, I'm going to pursue it. To pursue something is an acknowledgement it's going to take some time, right? If it's truly a worthy ideal, this big thing, right? People talk about motivation. Well, the level of your motivation is going to depend on the size of your motive, right? If your motive is big enough, your motivation will sustain. So when you pursue something and it's acknowledgement, it's going to take some time. And so in your environments and the cultures that you exist in, whether you're a manager or just a worker, it does not matter your level. If that worthy ideal of having the best life possible, which should be a part of that, if it's truly worthwhile for you, as it should be, hopefully, is asking yourself again, how do I engage in that worthy ideal to a point where I'm willing to pursue it regardless, right? Persistence is not the absence of obstacles. It's moving forward in spite of obstacles. And the crazy part is, we all know that the most successful people in the world have failed way more than the average person. So like, we know these things, but yet and still, when we face failure, we often stop. We don't want to go past that obstacle. I always say that, if you really want success in life, it's going to be found on the other side of I don't feel like it. If you want to get in shape, you're going to have to get up in the morning when you don't feel like getting up in the morning, or going to the gym, or eating that salad. If you want to build better relationships, you're going to have to push through when you don't feel like saying I'm sorry or doing those hard things. If you want to have a better culture, you're going to have to move forward on the days on that Monday morning when most people have an Eeyore mindset, right? It's Monday. And engage in what has to be done unquestionably, because if it's a worthy ideal, you'll pursue it persistently. And the last word was with courage, right? Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward in spite of fear. And so when I ask people this idea of, if I were doing a full session with you guys, right, I would go back and I would have a whiteboard and I'd say, give me the characteristics of people that you admire or that you view as successful, highly successful. So you get words like drive, determination, humility, things like that. Well, there's two words that usually make the list that stick out the most for me. Number one is confidence. Confidence, because would you ever in your life call somebody successful if they weren't confident? And the answer is no. You wouldn't call them successful unless they were confident in at least some area of their life, right? So if they're out of their confidence, they exude that success, that you can see it in them, you can feel it in them, because there's a level of confidence. Well, simple question: how do you build confidence? You put the work in. So if I were to ask all of you, how many of you are confident in the work that you do? People goes, oh yeah, I'm confident in the work that I do, right? Did you start that way day one? No. Well, how'd you build it? Put the work in. Experience. You put the work in. Well, herein lies, especially when we talk about this idea of mental health, is one of the biggest gaps that we have in mental health is people's insecurities, a lack of self-confidence, right? People that are really dealing with mental health issues are the ones that lack those two things. Well, the lack of self-confidence goes back to, if you build confidence by putting the work in. If I were to say, okay, over the last year, how much, if we were in a court of law, what evidence would you produce of how much work you've put in on yourself, right? We go back to this idea, that pillar within organizations, that personal dimension. Of course, you want organizations to participate in it, but we have to hold our hand up to say, what are you doing to commit to become that next better version of yourself? Do you know what it looks like? And so this idea of confidence is simply put the work in. If you start to say, I'm going to build confidence in my life, that benefits every single area of your life, because every part of your life gets better the more confident you are. You're better at work, you're better in society, at home, your relationships, you're just better all around the more confident you are. And simply, you build confidence by putting the work in. So again, commit to putting the work in on yourself, whatever that looks like, to build your confidence. Second word that stands out the most in this space of success is happiness. Happiness is really the point. Why do you do the things that you do? To make you happy. You take vacations because it makes you happy. You take your kids out to eat to make yourselves happy, so you don't have to cook or just have a good meal. Happiness is the point. And to quote the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh, he had said, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way, right? Happiness is the way. So how do you direct in that space of finding out those things that make you happy? And when you engage in those things and you build those into your regular practice, right? Make a list of things that make you happy. Schedule it into your days, your weeks, all those type of things. The more happiness you build in your life, right? Every area benefits. And so those two words stick out the most for me when I think about confidence and happiness. And those are both things that there's zero excuse. There's zero excuse that you could not work on those things going into the year, those type of things. And in that space, the reality for me is, again, you can't do everything. That's 100% fact, right? In your environments, in your life, you cannot do everything. But can you always do something? Yes. What is that thing? What are those things that you want to work on? What are the things you're willing to work in? So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of executive coaching or just coaching, personal coaching. And I have this author of my life tool that I engage in people. And the reality is, the people that do the work, it's not rocket science stuff, but you put it to practice, it actually works. And so that's these things I call good going on offense. It's building yourself up to a space, which we kind of transition back into the start of the year, right? How do we protect our mental health to make successful changes to start the year out? And we call this good going on offense. When you go on offense regularly, consistently, show up the next best version of yourself, right? In your workspaces, your energy will be at a level that you guys know the challenges. If you've been in this field for any period of time, like right now, if we had time, we could say, all right, let's list out what are all those challenges that you know you're going to face. Okay, so it's like, don't be surprised by them. How do we go on offense to give ourselves enough reserves, enough replenishment on a regular basis to make sure that we're going on offense to work on ourselves? And along the way, recruit help. You can't go it alone, right? You need no one person ever achieved anything of greatness in and by themselves. And so find those individuals in your sphere of influence, right? Start with one or two or three who have the right mindset to be open to these things and say, okay, so here's the second question I want to give you guys. You just had the best year ever. You just had the best year ever. What is one thing that would have to be true personally and one thing that would have to be true professionally for that to be a true statement? 365 days from right now, so we're talking August 29th, 2024, you just had the best year ever. And what that does, it starts to get a picture of what is that goal. When you go back to statistics that say, like, most people don't even set goals anymore, to quote a motivational speaker, Les Brown, he said, if you don't have goals in life, you are a wandering generality, right? Harsh words to a degree, but it's a reality. It's kind of like you're a leaf in the wind, just blowing based off the days. And so if you leave it to chance, look around you, look at society right now. If I asked all of you, is mental health in our country, just even globally, is it getting better or worse? And we know it's getting worse. We know this, right? And then let's take your population who you engage with, right? In this space, there's actually a study that came out from Harvard that said they asked a question around mental health amongst teenagers. How many kids from 2011 to 2021, so 10-year window, they asked teenagers how many of them over the last year had at least 2 weeks or more of anxiety, depression, or suicidal thoughts. That number from teenage boys jumped from 21% to 29%. The number amongst teenage girls, 36% to 57%. So to give the analogy, if you were on vacation in Indonesia at the beach, and all of a sudden the water recedes by 100 feet, what do? You better run. There's a tsunami coming. Well, okay, this is your guys' space. You guys deal with kids, you deal with folks in this space. There is a tsunami coming. So if we are not preparing, fortifying ourselves, starting to go on offense, and even starting with the practicality of what does the next best right step look like. Again, that's why I'm adamant of, like, what are you doing to build an intentional culture? What are you doing to build yourself to prepare for these things? Because again, you know the onslaught of the challenges that are going to come this year. How can you, or do you, lock in with those few people that are willing to fortify with you and not get caught up by the drowning issues that you know are going to come at you, but start to say, okay, what can we do? What's the next best right step? If you focus in that goal of one thing personally and professionally, if that was 365 days to work towards those two things, that at least gives you a aiming point of what you're focusing on. Because if you allow your focus to be diluted by all the stuff around you, you're going to get swept up into another year. You're going to find yourself in a short few months overwhelmed and just. But if you can lock in on what you can control and what you can influence, that's where I want to challenge all of us to pour energy. And so doing that, protecting our mental to go on offense going into the year is extremely, extremely important. So again, I know there's only a few minutes left, so I'll pause for any questions in those few things, or the few challenges I had given you guys.
I have a question that I will kind of kick it off with if people are thinking yet. So you've talked a lot about going on offense, and I think one thing that those of us who are either working with kids regularly or supporting those that are working with kids regularly are really aware of the slumps throughout the year. And it becomes, kind of that after the Christmas break, we kind of start the year right now. Everybody's jazzed up. They're ready to go. They have a plan, lots of energy. And when we come back from that Christmas break, we're in the hardest part of winter. The kids are kind of done with this school thing. And we start to slump, and we start to see our staff get a little burnt out, get a little tired. And then we see that happen again in the summer months. We're around the 4th of July. summer starts to get really long, we have staff that are with kids now 8, 9 hours a day, and they're long days. So when we're thinking of that going on offense that you talked about, what are some ways when we're kind of building up to that, and we know it's coming, these are things that happen in the industry. What are some ways that we can kind of work ahead on that mental health or kind of help prepare ourselves so that we're still doing the best we can for our kids as well?
Absolutely. I think number one, I heard this actually from, it kind of sparked for me when I was got to interview James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, and he used this word seasons, right? And especially in South Dakota, to your point, Lisa, like adding to the fact that we know there's months of winter ahead. Number one, being realistic. What's the best possible outcome working through that season? Oftentimes we desire to have that spring, the April, May mindset in January, and that just compounds to the problem. Like the reality is, like we know what South Dakota winters are going to bring, and so when we're realistic about the things that are in front of us, right, the best possible outcomes. I'll give you the one thing. If I can give you one thing above everything else, right, it's how do you start your day? And in this, right, again, most people, when you roll into work, because everything really comes down to energy. Like if you talk about, use the word excitement, you're starting the year out excited. But what happens as the year drains on, people start to get wore down, wore down, wore down. Well, in the moment, like when your emotions, when you don't feel like it, we get caught up and we get in the tsunami of just like, oh, just drudging through that. And you hear it. I mean, listen, what's the dialogue in the winter? Oh, you hear more negativity all of the time. Go on offense is simply choosing the mindset of like, how do you start your day? Like at any given moment, you can't always choose your emotions, but you can choose your focus. And so if you said every day you come to work, all right, great day, let's have the best day possible. I'm fighting for the best day possible, right? And you rally the troops of those who are willing to do it. Now, some people are gonna be like, I don't want to do that, whatever the case is. Let those folks argue for their limitations, right? But at any given moment, like it's truly the halftime, right? The best coaches in sports, if you would, they come out of halftime with readjustment plans. So you can go into the year with the best intentions, the best plans, but the reality of it is, it's like things are going to happen. So along the way, make those notes, keep plugging away, and whether that's a first quarter adjustment, second quarter adjustment, in those moments, ask yourself that question: what is the best possible outcome right now, given this season, what we're facing? Because when you focus on that versus all the things, that's where people get messed up. They dilute their focus on this and that thing and that thing. Success happens one step at a time. And so it's like, what can we sprint on? Okay, even when shit hits the fan, if you would, right? Let's knock out that next best thing. The next, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. And so when you can lock in and get people to focus on the next best right thing, that gives you something to aim at. And so there's no magic formula to making it through South Dakota winters in addition to the energy. It's saying, okay, what's the best possible outcome to have the best winter possible, knowing we can't control the weather. And I would even say, when you talk about healthy culture, toxic culture, like start having some of those buzzwords. We're not going to allow these words to make it into our space, because when you talk about weather in the winter, that only brings it down. Right? When you talk about, back to work, that only brings it down. So again, language leads. Like when you challenge, again, even if you don't say something positive, just get people to shut their mouths and stop talking out loud the negativity. That only compounds the negativity all of the time. It's helping nothing. And so really focusing on what can I control, challenge with that. What can you control? Yourself, your attitude, your energy every day. What can you influence the world around you? And then the things that you're concerned about, put those things aside to a degree of saying, we're going to focus all our energy on these first two things. And when you do that, you're giving yourself an opportunity for the best possible outcome.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really helpful, I think, to break it down and work on what we can. Just checking here. Yeah, great. Jody popped some great stuff into the chat as well. Did anybody have any questions that they'd like to throw out to end today? You can just come off mute, shout it out. Dawn Marie has also popped into the chat some of those challenge pieces that Tamien brought up, as well as some of the questions. We are recording today, so we will send things out as well. Guess if there aren't any questions, I definitely want to thank Tamien. Yeah, thanks so much, Bethany. We love listening to Tamien talk as well, and it's really great energy to get started with the year. So I want to thank Tamien for taking the time to come today and be part of getting us off to a great start for the school year. I also want to put a plug out for Tamien and his company Think 3D have two really great conferences coming up in South Dakota, both in Sioux Falls and now in Rapid City for all of our West Side friends as well. And that is their CultureCon, where you can get a lot more information, just like Tamien shared today, with him and his partners, as well as other regional leaders. It's another really great reset and energizer type thing for you to partake in. So highly recommend that as well. And then I want to preface and get you ready for the rest of the year. We have some more Fireside chats planned, and we'll be rolling those out as they come up here. We'll be doing one in September, October, and November. And a lot of those will be based around tools that can help make your job easier and that you can pass on to those in after school networks as well. So keep an eye out for all of that. And we're excited to get those things rolling out and more education and information coming your way.